Going to the Philippines, I had a trip to the Philippines to explain and to promote the early net events. And down in Cagayan de Oro is the South Philippine Union. And in due time we meet the different staff and okay, I had a meeting with the pastors and then they kind of shyly said, well, we have one of our accountants, well, two of our accountants who have a interest in video production, and they're doing some little programs and they're broadcasting it over the local TV station, and we're getting a very good response from it. I said, okay, well, let me see what they're doing. So I hear these two guys had gotten together and they had a little tiny, I mean, literally this big of a consumer home camera. And they were using this to record sermons in the church there at the compound at the Union. And then they had pirated some software to edit things. They had taught themselves how to edit, and they were giving a new program every week to the local local TV station, doing really good. There were good response. And so I said to Candace, honey, we need to do some training for these guys and give them some equipment so they can get going. Well, to make a long story short, it ended up that, and I say this to the credit of the sacrifice of people involved, that Brother Fritz Wertz, some of you know him from the Kelowna area, he was building churches in central Philippines, and of course I know the Wertz family well, and I said, Fritz, we need some funding for the equipment for the channel. Well, okay, make a long story short, he supplied the funding for it, and there are lots of wrinkles with that, how that all worked. But anyways, we ended up with the equipment, and on top of that, the studio. Now, Candace, describe the office building and your blueprint that you designed for these guys.
My first visit there, they had this little room that was maybe about half the size of the stage. And they had 3 different sets and 3 corners. And I watched them do a live 2-hour program. And I thought to myself, how are they going to do that? They had a couple little cameras. And so they had the first half-hour program. They went to a break and played some stuff on their old computers that I swear they couldn't hardly even turn on. And I watched with amazement. Out came a ladder. Somebody ran up the ladder. They turned the lights this way. They moved the cameras. And the next host sat down. And within 2-3 minutes, they were broadcasting from that set. Then they did the same thing an hour later with another set in the other corner. And I sat there and cried. I thought, my goodness, here they are, just like, with nothing. But they're doing so much. And so we had purchased a set of equipment that we had taken around the world and used in a number of locations. And that is the equipment. It was fully HD equipment. And we were able, with the gift of Mr. Wertz, to relocate that eventually back in the Philippines. Then they said, well, we need a proper studio. And so we were sitting at a restaurant just before I flew out of the country. I grabbed a serviette and I drew the lines on it, and I told them approximately they had a great big badminton court.
You gotta let me explain about the building. The office had 3 floors, but when they had built the office building, they had built the roof up high enough. You remember, you see this thing, so that there was actually enough room there for a tennis court up on the top of the roof. Because it rains so much, they just put the roof up there, and there's no problem with the heating and all that kind of stuff. So there was this area which was being used as storage, and they were using it for recreation, etc. like that.
And that was pretty big. I mean, it was like 2/3 of the size of this sanctuary. And I said, you've got the location right here. It's on the same level as the studio that you have right now. Just build that out. And so I took a serviette, sketched out how it should look, layout and whatever. And we had prayer, and I flew back to the U.S., and they took that through, and it was
the serviette blueprint became the blueprint for encasing this whole area up there, and the whole top floor became the studio for the South Philippines.
Yeah.
Now, what was interesting there was that it's up on the 4th floor. And now guests had to get up there, and the staff had to get up there with all the equipment and stuff. How do you get up there? Well, they had some of this construction, how this stuff, all aluminum stuff, you could put it together, scaffolding on. Well, these stairways were steep, like everything, but the young guys doing all of this work had no problem, but older guests were having a real problem. Brother Wertz, I said, we need to put in an elevator. So he funded putting in an elevator so that we could bring stuff back and forth up to the fourth floor, which was a huge blessing. But now that was the stepping stone for the fact that there was another Seventh-day Adventist who owned a national broadcast license for all of the Philippines. And as a businessman, he had a lot of costs invested into this. He was willing to sell that national broadcast license, which was both for radio and television, for nationally. Well, to make a long story short, the church and the president of the division at that time, who was originally from the South Philippines, we had done a net evangelism event where he had been the preacher, and he saw the huge impact that it was making for the preaching and the evangelistic side. And so, anyways, the division got behind it, and how much were they inviting all of the members?
It's like 100 pesos, which is like $2.
$2. Please donate. How much was it?
100 pesos.
A month.
I think it was
Once a month. Can you please donate $2? I think it was 40 to 1 at that point in time. $2 per month for all of our families, not individuals, because the economy is so low. And so our brothers and sisters across the Philippines made a huge contribution to make this happen. Well, now today, in the Philippines, we have television coverage right across the nation, both in radio and television because of this national broadcast license, and that has been renewed and confirmed by the National Congress of the Filipino government, granting us that complete license for all of the
And there's multiple studios now all across the Philippines.
Now, in the recent net events, or satellite event, do you remember how many people who were baptized?
I don't remember. It's a lot.
Somehow it was around 30 to 40,000 people who were baptized from that particular event as it developed across the Philippines. So that has made, and they have recently purchased a new transmitter for the Manila area, which is all, it's incredible how God arranged it, because we went from analog to digital. Well, in the analog bandwidth, you can put about 10 digital channels. And so we own this analog channel, which was part of this license, but we transferred it to the digital, which gave us 10 channels. So they've leased off, I should say, several of the other channels, and the income from leasing these other channels now pays for the new transmitter, which makes Manila, it's got a high-powered digital signal right across the entire city. Again, God has ways of opening these things up. But now, I want you to catch it. It wasn't because of some big massive investment of $1 million of equipment to make something happen. It started with this little tiny camera from some lay people, some guys who were wanting to see this happen, and they went to work and make that happen.